Hello, my name is Thomas Bowker. I worked on Frog Detective with Grace Brooksner, and I wanted to just kind of make a little video showing the project, well, the project in its current state, which is just after Frog Detective 2 came out, basically. Well, like this project is, that's where this project is at. We've been working on 3 at the moment, but I've very cleverly hidden all that content that we've been working on. So yeah, I thought it would be interesting just to show the project because I don't think I've seen a video like this before where a developer had just done like a show and tell or like a project tour and just kind of just went through their project and described the systems and things like that, and the tools that we used, and how messy it can be. I don't think Frog Detective is that messy because it's a pretty simple game, but we definitely, this is not going to be an example of a perfect project. And I'm not a professional streamer or talker, so apologies if the quality of those things is not ideal. So I think this video will be interesting for anyone who's interested in game development or other game developers. Like I know I would be interested in seeing my friends' projects, the ones that are in development or the ones that are finished. And this will contain like spoilers for the Frog Detective game, so I suggest that you play those before you watch this video. Yeah, okay, so what I might do is just, I'll briefly describe what Unity is and show you the basics of. Then I was just going to list out the tools that we used, and just like very straightforward, just show them and describe what they are and what we use them for. Some of those tools are designer things or like narrative things. Some of them are just straight up technical code stuff, and I might just list them. I'm not sure exactly how to show them, but I'm just going to like kind of charge forward and just keep recording. Then I might outline the systems, or what I call the systems. I guess just the things that aren't, I guess the systems that I created that are like Frog Detective specific, including like the outline effect and things like that. Maybe we'll look at the book because I think the book is good. Then I have there's a few like fun, well, there's like 2 like bugs that I think are interesting to show or to tell. And then I only have like a few questions from Twitter that I might answer. So that's going to be the rough structure of this video, I think. Yeah, so Unity, we use this project. So we're working on another Frog Detective episode, but I've kind of hidden all that from this video. This is basically where the project was at when we released episode 2. And so yeah, this project contains Frog Detective 1 and Frog Detective 2. For an episodic game, there can be advantages to working out of one project. So that's what we decided to do. When we released 1, it was very, what did we do? It was working on 1, we weren't sure we were going to make 2, so we just made it as quickly as possible. And after 1 was released, we decided that we wanted to go forward and make another one. But I had the opportunity to just go back and clean everything up. So we threw out a lot of code and kind of remade it from scratch and like supported different tools and things like that. So I had to go back to episode 1 and convert it to the new system once that was done. But I have done that. And so yeah, now we're working out of one project for both games and the next one too. Yeah, so this right now this is Unity 2018.4. I think I'd like to go to 2019.4. At the time of recording, 2019.4 is not out. I don't expect there to be a huge pain in upgrading. Yeah, so Unity, it's a game engine. It's comprised of a bunch of windows. There's a lot of different ways to lay out these windows. At the moment, this is just what I've had set up. I kind of roughly use this kind of layout depending on what I'm doing, and you can change your layouts and save them and stuff and switch between them. But yeah, we have this. So a Unity game is usually comprised of a bunch of files called scenes. A scene is it's a scene. It's a scene in a game. It can be used that way, and it's how we use it. Yes, this window here is your scene view, which just shows like an editor view of all your game objects in your scene, and you can fly around and click on things and move them. I can't click on the frog right now because of the kind of click detection, but yeah, you can move your frog around. This view here is the game view. It's kind of just where it's showing what your game will look like, depending on where your camera is, of course. There's this hierarchy window. This is just a list of all the game objects in your scene. There's a project view, which is just a list of your assets. It's actually just identical to Explorer or Finder on Mac. And there's this inspector window, which just shows details of whatever you have selected, like this prawn. And yeah, there's obviously a bunch of other windows. I don't use everything in Unity, as I said before. And this video would just be like a very quick overview. You can make your own windows. So I made this kind of frog builder window. This helps us to just quickly build the different versions of the game. Because yeah, as I said, we've got episode 1 and 2 in here. And yeah, I think it's very useful to have a one button or close to one button build system. You can even have an automatic, but we haven't set up an automatic system for it. I don't think we don't need it. This is good enough for now. There's also a way to switch between episodes in the editor in here. It's kind of a bit hacky in a certain way, but yeah, there are differences between the episodes, and I've just have these little buttons here. We don't usually need to switch between episodes in the editor anyway, because we're usually just working out of one episode at a time. And we do have, like, for each episode, there is the standalone version and the Steam version, so there's differences between those two, so we need to be able to build all those different versions. So a scene in Unity is basically just a bunch of game objects, and a game object is a container for components. Like this cube here I've made, which I can rotate and position. I'm not sure how in depth I want to go, but yeah, I mean, these components are listed here in the inspector when you have it selected. Like the components that this basic cube has has a mesh renderer, which you can turn on and off. Obviously that turns off at rendering, and a box collider, which is used for physics. Yeah, so all these game objects have different components on them. They have child game objects. The frog has animation, and a bunch of child game objects which were kind of, I think, created based on the mesh that Grace made. And I think that's all I want to describe about how Unity works, really, before just diving into it, diving into the frog tools. So I might just continue and just go down the list and show them off. The most important one is probably yarn. And so yarn /yarn spinner /Merno by a bunch of people worked on yarn and yarn spinner. A Merno is a Unity specific plugin that Robert Yang and some other people contributed to. And I'll try to leave links to all the things I'm referencing in the description of this video or somewhere. Maybe I'll edit in a link on the screen. Always love it in a video when people talk about editing their video later and then you can see it and it's really great. They did their job. They edited the link on the video. So yeah, let's look at Yarn and how we used it. They've just released, or maybe like a month ago, Yarn Spinner just released. I think they called it their 2.0 version, and it's really good. From what I've seen, we haven't upgraded it to our Yarn Spinner to 2.0 yet, but it looks really good. So if you're interested in checking out Yarn, definitely check out the most latest version. So what did I do? I made a scene that just shows off our like Yarn implementation, and that's here. So we've got these examples. Let's just jump in. So yeah, this is the game object, and I made it so when you click on it, you can kind of like see the conversation objects like appear. Like the frog is a object that is only active when the conversation's active. But we've got this edit script button here, so we can open Merino and just see the Yarn. Trying to figure out the best way to show this and which window to show it in. Let's just make it a bit bigger. Hopefully you can see that. Maybe I'll just full screen it for now. I guess this is just example scripts I made in an example scene. So Yarn's really straightforward. I really like how Merino presents it. Yarn, I think, is like a node-based. Yeah, well, I know it's a node-based kind of script, but Merino kind of displays it in a more kind of script format. So it's just we've built custom stuff to identify the character that's speaking, and then what that character says is here. So you can just write it very simply, like the conversation, and we can just quickly jump in and see that, play the game, and see that conversation. As soon as this starts up, it's a bit slow. Oh yeah, and I have like when you're playing the game in the editor, like I have a few shortcuts that just help you play the game quickly, and one of them is holding shift, but shift also brings up the magnifier, so you might see that me like speed around with the magnifier open, because I haven't changed that. You can't do that in like a built game. Anyway, yeah, so we've got conversations. We can click on a character and it breaks because we did something bad. This is a great example of something broken. Okay, I fixed that problem. It had to do with, we haven't actually used this example scene, like we haven't gone back to this example scene in a while, so some of the things I changed about switching episodes and like which episode you're playing in the editor like didn't work when I was in this example scene where it's like not really part of any episode. Anyway, I fixed that. So I've got all these conversations here, and they just kind of show examples of the system I've set up, and how Yarn works as well. So this is like the text is going to be up here, and the game is down here. So hopefully that's readable. Yeah, and like some of this will be, I'll just quickly show like how we've used Yarn and how Yarn can work. Some of it, if you're not familiar with it, obviously it'll be hard to follow. but there's lots of resources about how yarn works and how yarn spinner works on the internet, so you can look it up. Yeah, let's just quickly go through. So this is like a really simple conversation, just like one character speaks, Tom speaks, then detective speaks, Tom speaks, and then there's an example of a line that actually has no character. And you also notice that the camera switches, and that's something I can show how that works later. Yeah, and the line that had no character didn't have any camera to point at, so it just stayed put. And there's also an example of a variable here. So at some point, what's this? The info.talked to example 1. So yeah, that just tracks if you've talked to the first example. This is like a Boolean value, so it can be true or false. Actually, no, this is actually text that can be true or false. But anyway, yeah, it's like basically a piece of code that runs in your script that just sets that you've talked to example 1 to true. Yeah, so we can look at the second example now. And oh wow, I've actually disabled the edit script and while it's playing, that's weird. But we can just go Mariner and open the folder that has, oh, you can't actually see this, but I have my folder selection open. I'll just find the folder that has all the example scripts. Where did I put it? Examples, yarn scripts. Okay. Right. Okay. So now we have all the examples open here, just so we can see the text as we talk to the examples. Yeah. So yarn is a node-based scripting system, so different nodes show up in Mariner in like different little tabs here. So if we talk to this one, so this example shows the dialog choices and nodes system. So yeah, multiple nodes here. Yeah, so this is how you do questions in, or like dialog choices in yarn. This is one of the ways to do it. So this is the text that shows up, and this is the node that it'll skip to if you select that option. So we've got two options here, like sure, okay, no thanks. So click sure, okay, and then it'll go to this another question node. And this is a different way to ask questions, is using this shorthand, which is, I think this is the way we usually do it. So we can pick an option, and then it's also you can kind of nest it. So you can have like another option right here. That can get messy pretty quickly, but if it's just like one layer in, it's okay. Yeah. And then that ends. There's nowhere for that script to go, so the conversation just ends. Yarn functions. Yeah, let's just quickly show all this. Oh, this is something that is in the game, like what's in I supported it, but we haven't actually used it in the script at all, I don't think. So this is like a bit advanced where like you can let's just continue, that's just another choice, and then I call this function that sets this variable to a random number, and then based on that number the dialogue continues. So here just Tom is given a random number, and then he says what the number is. We haven't actually used that in the game. I'm not sure like where we'd use it, but you can also support like anything, like setting variable to anything in the game, really. But that was just, I guess I just want to support like kind of a wide range of like features so that Grace can kind of do whatever she wants and use it in whatever way she wants. So here we get into some camera stuff, which is So Yarn just is pretty bare bones, and you probably need a programmer to work with it and implement it, or you need a programmer to implement some more advanced stuff, like camera stuff. Like Yarn knows nothing about camera stuff. Yeah, so here when we started this conversation, the camera like animated, like zoomed in or lerped into where the position that the camera is supposed to be. And I just set up like a big example showing the different camera transitions and animations. I think this is just transitions actually. So there's like never fade, which is like basically the same as default. Always fade, so like whatever character speaks next, or he explains it here. Cuts, it fades out, cuts, and fades in. So fades out, cuts, fades in to whatever the character, wherever the camera needs to go next, which is usually the next character speaking in the script. I can just show that quickly in the script. Yeah, it just looks like this. So Tom speaks, and then we call this custom function to set the camera transition, and then it stays in that transition like mode until you like set it back, which we set it back here, and then this goes straight back to the questions. The questions being the examples. So we'll just show off the lerp, which is just the animated one. It just lerps it over time, which we use a bit, like we use that a little bit in Frog Detective 2 just to show things. I think like when Mandy talks about the pies, the camera just quickly cuts to the pies to make sure that the player knows what a pie looks like, because the pies we have in the game are like Australian like meat pies or like British meat pies, I think, but Americans their idea of a pie is a bit different. So I think it was a bit important to show what we call pies in the game. Let's look at this example now. More camera stuff. I wonder what this is. Right, so this is just showing examples of how to control the camera in the script in a more like a manual way. Oh yeah, you might see like these line IDs. This is for the localization system that we haven't taken advantage of fully yet, but we do plan to support different localizations in the game at some point in the future. Hopefully when we release 3, it'll like 1 and 2 will be updated with the localizations that we want to support. I think we're saying right now which ones we're working that out right now, which ones we want to support. But that's what this line ID is for. So I could stop here and just show off some of how the camera stuff kind of works. So because this example shows a bunch of camera stuff, camera animation, right? So this cuts to different cameras that I set up in different ways, and it's just kind of like a very like manual way to like cut to different cameras and animate a little cutscene in like the script. And I'll show more of that, how that's set up right now. But this is how you write it in the script, which is like pretty good, I think. But I don't think it's perfect, but we have like the idea of camera modes. Before we had like camera transitions, which just control how the camera like cuts to the next camera. But this is like camera mode, which is like a bit confusing. But anyway, we've got, you can set the camera mode to free and then like just cut to the detective, and then like the camera won't like cut away or anything if a different character talks. And then we set it back to default here, and then we have this other command that hides the dialog box, and then another one that sets the camera transition to lerp, which we've seen before, and then we have a bunch of like cut to camera like over time. So that's like cut to is the command, and then this is the camera ID, which I'll show you later, and this is the time that takes to cut to. and then we wait for half a second, and then like cutting to a bunch of different cameras, and then waiting for another second, and that's how that little cutscene that you saw was written. But let's look at how the camera is actually positioned in the editor. So let's stop the game and can click on the conversation object. And we've got this little edit cameras button. Some of this can be a bit messy. We'll see how bad this looks to everyone else. But this is a tool that I made to quickly kind of set up cameras and position them. So yeah, you've got edit cameras button, and then all your cameras show up here. You can select them, whatever one you have selected shows in the game view what that exact camera angle is going to be, and your tools here, your I forgot what this is called, gizmo, little gizmo changes to control the camera you have selected. And so you can do whatever you want, rotate it, or you can rotate and position it where you want. So every camera has a name by default, and this is how like we're able to write a simple script and have the camera cut automatically. Is by default, if the camera's name is the same as that character's name, that is the camera that will be used when that character is speaking. So characters in the game have an ID and like a name, like a display name, just to make the scripts easier to read. The detective's character ID is just D, and I set one up for me, which is just Tom. So that's how you can like kind of a bit easier just to write quickly. And also like if we're going to localize the game, the characters might have different localized name anyway. So the script is just going to be a shorthand for each character. Yeah, I think okay, yeah, we'll go back to the scene. So I have a bunch of different cameras here, which was used in their little cutscene. One is like a close-up of a detective, one is a close-up of a detective's feet, and then like a zoomed out mode. So there's only 5 cameras, and that cutscene animates between, I think, just 3 of them. And we just quickly see that cutscene again, I think. Maybe full screen. I cannot full screen, not full screen this way. There we go. So it was more camera stuff. It's a very like amateur looking cutscene. Like it's very limited, which is kind of works with the charm of Frog Detective, I think. It also makes it like pretty easy, like pretty quick to make and set up, I think. Like we could, I mean, in a real animation like system, like a more polished game, you'd have like curves that you'd edit and whatever tools that real animators use to animate cameras, but this is what we have, and I think it fits with Frog Detective. So let's keep going. We've got some text control examples up next. I just have to open this folder again, just the script folder. Text styles. Yeah, so another tool that we use is Text Mesh Pro, which is a very good tool, and like I think Unity acquired, Unity like acquired that tool, I think, and now it's like included, and it's a very good tool to make your text anti-aliased. I'm sorry, just zoom in on myself. Yeah, so like by default, well, before. I'm just quickly show this. Before text would be kind of texture based or like glyph based. So if you wanted to render your text at different resolutions, it would do the things that textures do, which is like not scale well. But Text Mesh Pro is like a signed to distance field based. So like basically it means that the text is very clear. But anyway, yeah, so here we have just different text effects in the script that can display. I think like some of these like were not used in Frogjective. I think we changed this one, I think just to be small. We definitely used the big one. And the highlighting is used in Frogjective 1. I don't think we did it much in Frogjective 2 actually, which is a bit of an inconsistency. Maybe we'll fix that. Like we'll change that at some point. I don't know. Yeah, so this is just an example of how to change that. I don't think that's that interesting. Most of that, yeah, that's actually controlled by Text Mesh Pro, so it's kind of just like a text styling change. There's also like a line speed thing here actually that we use sometimes to change how quickly text is displayed. What else? What are the examples here? One of them is the variables example, which is like a bit more advanced. Variables just like hold values basically. It's a kind of programming term. Let's look at this just in the script. Yes, this is an example of just having a number variable that increases by 1 every time you talk to this character. And based on that number, I think we do something else. Where is that actually? Oh, okay. Well, that's just how example of the count. But this is an example of a true or false variable. And so this just changes. Like if it's the second time you've talked to them, it skips the dialogue that we're going to say and just goes straight to the second visit text, and then it ends. I'll definitely show off the animation one. This one's a bit silly. It's just like kind of something I did for fun. We do use it to I'm sure we use it somewhere to change a character's animation while dialogue's happening. But let's just have a look at this. Special moves. There's like some camera animation stuff and then some set animation stuff. One of the animations, I think it's just like a T-pose, and he just goes back and forth quicker and quicker. And I was pretty happy that was possible with the little system I set up, just to like all that the camera animation and like the textures animation is just pretty simply, I mean there's a lot of like repeated text here, but pretty simply set up. And yeah. This next one's this item. I think this is just an example of having a piece of dialogue where you're not talking to another character, you're just kind of talking to yourself. But it's just like an item you interact with or something like that, which we only use a few times, but it's set up and it's set up to use if we want to. And the way that works is just like setting the camera to free and like never fading it, which is a bit of a hack, and like it's a bit weird to do that, but yeah. Oh, I think this is leftover testing code. I think I was actually testing some book stuff with this. Actually, I'll open the book and see if it breaks in here, because it definitely might break. The book was something that we added to Frogdective 2. Let's open the book. The book works. It's a very small book. It's got 1 page. I'll definitely show more about how the book works, because I did spend a bit of time on it. Here's a mystery monkey in the example scene. It's a mystery monkey upside down. And mystery monkey breaks because he's left over from, I think, the first time I set up this example scene, and I just had someone, I needed someone to put in here. And I should probably delete that. Yes, that's the whole, just a little, the example scene I made just to like test all the conversation features that we made and wanted to support. Another tool that we used was Doodle Studio 95, which is, oh wow, the window's really big because I've zoomed in for recording, but which is a little drawing tool. I didn't use this too much. Grace used it in a few places just to make little scribbles. It's a really nice editor for that, and you can make little animations and stuff. I'm just scribbling here, but yeah. Grace used it to make just the small things like these little smoke that are coming out of the Warlock Woods houses. And actually, like I wrote a little script to make that always face the detective. What else? Yeah, another tool is Grace used Mixamo, which is a website to get all the stock animations for the characters. Another tool that we used is Rewired, which is a controller and like input tool. We used it to map kind of keyboard and mouse inputs to actions, and then creating controllers to pretty easily support control input. And it has a bunch of stuff between it has a bunch of things to help switching between inputs and things like that. In episode 2, there's a book decoration mini game, and we kind of needed a virtual cursor. If you're using controller, like you use the sticks like a virtual cursor and select things, and setting that up from scratch is a bit of a pain, and like fitting it into your game is usually probably going to be a bit of a pain, but Rewired helped to set that up, and it works pretty well. Yeah, so the rest of the tools I have on my list that you can't really show, so I'm just going to list them and describe what they do. First one is Easy Save 3. We use that it helps to manage saving your save data to a file, and it's pretty useful. One is, I can show this one. It's called Sdf Toolkit. I might just play the game, and I'll try and list all these tools and put them in the description as well, wherever this video is. I'm not sure where you're watching it, but it'll be somewhere in a list. So Sdf Toolkit is a sign distance field. You can use it to convert normal textures into like a sign distance field texture. I think I can show. So I use it to smooth out the edges of certain objects. I used it to smooth out the edges of a lot of UI stuff, a lot of things that are kind of flat on the screen, or actually I think it's only UI objects really that I use it for. But like these magnifiers in the editor view here, you can see that the edges are, it's not a normal texture, right? It's rendering in a way that it can anti-alias for different resolutions. But you can use Sdf Toolkit to convert a normal texture to a sign distance field kind of gradient, and then it comes with a shader to render that in a crisper way on for the resolution that you're displaying at. The next tool is Text Mesh Pro, which comes like built in to Unity now, basically. But it's the same as Sdf Toolkit, where you can render your font, render your text in a very, very crisp way, and I like it a lot. Rendering text without this is a pain, and you get blurry text, and it's really ugly. The next few tools is just code stuff. I used MEC coroutines, which is just like a different coroutine implementation. It can be like a little bit better in some ways from Unity's default implementation. I used .tween to animate things from code, like this, like the UI here, like zooming in, like scaling in and out, and then fading as well. I just write that kind of stuff in code using .tween, and yeah. Eventually we do want to support localization, so we're planning to use we're planning to use this tool called i2 localization, and yeah, I've used it before, and yeah, I think we're going to use that to localize the game and I have built-in support for that mostly, but even like in Frog Detective 1, there's text in the world. There's a lot more text in the world, and we're gonna have to figure out how to localize that in an elegant way. Yeah, I think it's mainly like this text here and here and here, and also on the clipboard the Mystery Monkey has. I think that's most of the text, or all of the text that we'll have to deal with somehow. The code editor or IDE that I use is JetBrains Rider, which is here. I like it. It has a very silly name, and yeah, that's all I have to say about that. It's pretty good. We used git /sourcetree/bitbucket to handle our source control. I don't have much to say about that. It can be a bit of a pain if, you know, source control and handling collisions and things like that can be a bit of a pain, but there's only two of us, so we don't have to deal with it much at all, really. And Grace used Maya to model and animate things when she needed to animate. And that's all I have listed on my little list of the tools. I could have been missing some. I guess I could say we developed mainly in Windows, but I also have a Mac that I use sometimes. So, I mean, that's not really important. What else? I can't think of anything else. Google Docs. Yeah, I think that's it for the tools. So next I might try and explain how the outline effect works in like a little bit more detail. Let's just have a look at the game object, I guess. Let's just have a look, because I don't remember exactly how this works. Yeah, so the frog. So we've got the frog here. The frog has a tube collider. Well, like, what is that called? A capsule collider. Well, actually, it's called a character collider. But anyway, yeah, this is the frog. The frog has a camera parented to them. Yeah, and this is the main camera. There's a lot of different ways to do post-processing effects, and I think the way I'm doing it is a bit out of date, but it still works. So I have, I guess let's take a look at the frame debugger and just have a look at what's actually happening instead of just looking at the code or the components or something. The frame debugger is pretty cool. I don't actively use it a lot, but it's useful just to quickly show this. I mean, you can see the shadows here, the shadow map rendering. Let's have a look. Camera effects. Okay, render outline. Here we go. So in a scene, I have this idea of what I call a curio, which we can find monkey, and yeah, so there's this object called a curio, and a curio is just something that can be selected. And if the object can be selected, and there's this, I guess there's like a manager that controls what item should be selected at any time, and if an object is selected, it adds it to this render system where we separate, like we render that object again on a blank render texture in all white, and then we can take that and we can blur it. I think there's a bunch of different things in here. Oh yeah, there's like the different components of all the draw mesh calls for the monkey, because a lot of different materials on them. But anyway, yeah, we can take that black and white base image and blur it. And the way that blurring works is by like downsampling and kind of like blurring it in different directions, or like reading the texture in different directions and spreading it out. But at the end of that, you get this, which is like a blurred version of that render texture. And because of the way the gradient works, you can just like read the values in between 1 and 0, if that makes sense, or like between a certain range. And when you do that, you just automatically get an outline. And there's some shortcuts here, so you don't automatically get that, but you will get an outline. The reason I say you won't get this is because I do some extra stuff that is not shown here that wobbles or like offsets the outline a bit, and also anti-aliases the outline. So you can zoom in ×2 here and just, yeah, there's some anti-aliasing that's done, which you don't need to do, but it can look nicer depending on your game. Yeah, so that's, and then that we take that and we render it on top of the game. Yeah, so that's how it works. In terms of how you do it in Unity, like it's these components that you put on the camera, and the main function is this onRender image, where you take in your source texture and you render it into your destination texture. We can quickly look at the code. I'm not sure how helpful this would be, how much I remember, but it involves, let's have a look. Okay. Right, so we have like another camera that's the child object of, I'll just disable the frame debugger. Yeah, there's another, right, yeah, because I use layers as well to separate the object. Like if an object should be selected, its layer changes, and then like this outline camera only renders the outline objects. And it uses, it uses layers basically. And yeah, there's a bunch of materials that we use, and then like the graphics.blit is a big one. Right, and this is just like skipping some stuff. Yeah, and then you can turn off a big thing is that you can create a camera and then just disable it, and then in code you can call when to render. So this is calling when rendering the outline objects with a certain shader, which is useful. Then here we blur it using our blur function, and the cutoff is getting the outline from the blurred image and then overlaying it on the screen. Yeah, that might not be that useful depending on how familiar you are with code and everything, but hopefully it is interesting or helps a little bit. So I thought I might just explain the save system briefly, and the kinds of data that we had to save, because it's pretty important. I'm pretty anxious about things like corrupting save data or causing bugs because of save data. It happens kind of often to me, and the save system in Frog Detective, I think, is pretty good. It's fairly solid. We have had some bugs with it, definitely, through development, but it seems kind of okay at the moment. I think I have had the odd bug report where that I think was because I think it was an issue with the operating system not being able to read a file, though, like read the save file. So I don't think there's anything that I could have done in that situation. It might have been something to do with Unity as well. Maybe I had to update Unity or a bug with Unity, but I haven't had any of those reports. I only had like one of those in the past year, I guess, for Frog Detective. But yeah, anyway. So Yarn has a bunch of variables, and we use those heavily in the save system. Things like this variable here, Warlock Susan .intro complete. And we use that to track if you've already talked to Susan for the first time. So all those variables that we use are used in the save system, and every variable has a default value. And I save all the default values in a big variable component, and I kind of split them up to scenes and then split them up to characters. And this can be a lot to manage, but I set it up so that if you use a variable in Yarn and it's not instantiated with it doesn't have a default value set up here, it spits out a warning. And then so it's actually been very clear when, like, if we create a variable very briefly and it doesn't have a default value, which is really, really important, it'll warn you. And we haven't had any bugs related to that, thankfully. But yeah, you can see that obviously the default value of the Warlock Susan intro complete is false. So like the default state when you play the game is that you haven't talked to Susan yet. And yeah, so the default value is used if you don't have any save data. But if you do have save data and you start the scene, then it'll use whatever the save data says is the value. So the default value obviously only used if it's instantiating or you don't have save data. I did make this debug system to just quickly set up different kind of save data states to play from the editor. So like obviously clear save just starts the scene fresh, just starts it empty without any save data. And obviously you start the entrance and you haven't talked to Susan or anything. But I set this up so I could quickly test certain things. So like if I quickly want to test questioning Susan on anything, hopefully this works because I haven't used it in a while, but I mean, it should work. Yeah. So the detective can start in a different position, and you can have different default values for all the variables. So here I just set it up that when I'm testing this, the intro is already complete, so we just go straight to the questions. And that's been very useful for testing. So I guess I can just quickly look at the save code. So I heavily use singletons in my code. There's a lot of managers. That's just how I code, and it's been okay. It's been fine. But some of the other things that I save besides all the Yarn variables is I need to save which scene we are continuing from if we have save data. So depending on the scene we reset. Depending on the scene we reset the detective's position or not. Well, okay. The detective. There's some scenes that don't have autosave. And these are like much smaller scenes, like well, some scenes are very small, and the only large scenes are like Warlock Woods and the island. And those scenes have autosave. So if you quit them in the middle of, talking to half the characters and then come back, it'll load up where you left off. But a lot of scenes don't have that. But in the case where it is a big scene where you need to have autosave, we save the frogs, the position and rotation. This so in the dialogue system, at the moment I track if you've already asked a certain question, and I think this is just a bit of text to track that, or like a bit of text for the key to track that. And then the stickers, right? I guess the stickers are, where do we use this? Right, I guess it's, right. We have this sticker placed data, which is, each sticker has like an ID, position, size. I don't think we use size, but it saves size anyway, and rotation and layer as well, right? So for each sticker we do need to save all that data and then like recreate it when the game loads up again to save the correct sticker layout. Another way to do the stickers was to like render an image or something and then save that image, but it was much better to just recreate it, because then you can look at the book in different resolutions and stuff. And I think that's all I want to say about this save system. The next thing we can look at is just the book. I guess I'll just open the book. Actually, I think I can. I wonder if I have any. I don't think I have any debug stuff to like complete the book or anything like that, but I can just open the book. Actually, it should have Susan. You'd think it should have Susan's. Yeah, well, the Susan picture is there because that's mapped to the intro, like whether you've talked to her is when the name and picture shows up. Okay, let's have a look. Book. Let's have a look at the book object. So the book was a bit complicated to make. It's a bit of a finicky piece of input and UI. But I was pretty motivated, and I was excited to make it. I thought it would be like a really cool tool to be able to use, and it was also made to kind of solve or like handle some tutorial stuff really, and like track, kind of like help the player keep track of the narrative, even though like narrative's like not super complex. Like we wanted to help the player in whatever way to like comprehend and remind themselves about what's going on, and like who all the characters are and like what their names are. And also it's another vessel for humor, of course, and also a tool, like a role-playing tool. So I was really excited to be able to implement this, and I think I did a pretty decent job. So I to fit in with everything else, I guess I kind of thought it would work if it was 3D. So I decided to just spend a bit of time kind of making this like fake. It's just cubes. I didn't know how to model. I didn't model anything. It's just cubes. It's just rotating page cubes, and I just did all this through math. Just like laid it and rotated it in the right way. And I'll show you how I set up the pages. But the controls for the book are like, I guess we kind of, for a while we weren't sure what it was going to be, but it ended up being, you can just flip the pages and there's like one input per page, and that just at the moment that just toggles the suspicious sticker on and off, which is pretty good. For a little bit, like we weren't sure like how that was going to work. Like obviously, like if you have a mouse, you can use the mouse to click on like items within a page, but setting up I don't know, I guess like a little like highlighting, selecting like a menu thing, if there's anything here like on a page that you need to like select, would be a bit finicky, especially with the controller. But yeah, we opted for the simpler approach, which is just like a single button, and also like reminding the players of the input on the screen, which is like, to me, feels like very Nintendo, very like pretty accessible. Yeah, we can look at the book kind of editor. Oh, I guess, yeah, this is obviously like all spoilers. So we can just open up the prefab here, and we can get rid of, oh, this is the addressable asset thing. So let's have a look. So I've opened up the detective book, the book prefab. Here we can edit the book or just set it up. It was a bit tedious to set all these up, but it wasn't that bad. Once we kind of knew what we wanted there to be in the book when we started doing this, so it was by the time I had to set this all up, it was pretty straightforward. And yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, so there's a separate camera for the book. It is a perspective camera, so it is like 3D, but the field of view is turned down a whole bunch to kind of keep it the right size, but still keep it the right size on the screen, but still keep that sense of it being like a 3D object. What else we got? One of the last things I did was I made a little pencil. I made this little pencil cursor and animation when anything was filled out. I thought that was kind of good. This is actually one of the few. This is one of the few textures that I made in the game. Yep. We'll just move on. Grace, very generous to allow me to leave that in the game. Yeah, so the book has covers. The covers are a bit special, I guess. Well, the idea was that you can have the way I've set this up is that you have covers, and then you can have as many pages as you want, and the pages can be, depending, like maybe if we want to bring back the book for another objective game, we can take this structure and just make different pages, right? And yeah, so it's a bit flexible in that way. So we've just got the covers, which again they're just cubes, really. Actually, no, they're not. Oh, that's right. These are all canvases. These are all kind of UI objects, UI canvases, and then later I take those canvases and attach them to cubes. Yeah, anyway. The inventory is a bit of a special page. You'll see that all the objects don't actually fit. If you had all the objects, it wouldn't fit on the page, but the way the game works, you never have all the objects at once, so that's not a problem. Yeah, then we just have all the character pages. All the information, well, the information collecting part of the book is it hooks into the variable, the yarn variables. So what's a good example? Probably not the wizard. Sorry, that was a spoiler. So there you go. So let's look at Carlos's page. So all the objects on a page usually have this book information component, and this is hooked into the variable system. So like when you finish a dialogue with a character, the book checks if you've unlocked any new information, and if you have, then it starts up the book animation system, and it flips to the right page. And yeah, like if this right here is where we set the variable and we set the target that it should show at, and some things are like a little bit hacky about this, but it worked really well. Yeah, so we just have different components for, I think, slightly different components for like an image versus a bit of text, but they behave the same because we just show, like we just turn on and off the object basically in the animation to kind of show the detective writing it in, or the pictures are kind of they have this kind of tape, which is how we explained it. Oh yeah, and I play the sticker sound effect to imply that the detective like slaps a picture of them in the book, I guess. So something else I wanted to show off was just a few shaders I made for Frog Detective 2. The first was just this fog object, which just simply uses the depth. I think it reads the depth texture to kind of just fade a color in. And the other one was just this little glow shader actually. And this one's a bit more complex because yeah, so it actually like always faces the camera using the vertex shader. It kind of gets the camera position and changes its rotation to face the camera. Then it actually like moves towards the camera a little bit, and then it also reads the depth texture to fade out as you get closer. The behavior in the editor view is like pretty much the behavior in the game. So that's how you get like these little objects glowing from far away, and then when you get closer to them, they kind of fade out a bit. It's not perfect. Sometimes it can look a bit funny. I'll just play the game, and we'll look at it through there. Oh, the something else that hold on, let me just, it's not right. The fog can also look a bit funny because it's also like a very simple effect, so it can look funny on the corners here. And we had to like kind of hide some of the bad spots with trees and things like that, but it works for what it is. Yeah, so yeah, this little glow shader was really useful. I think it was yeah, I like it quite a bit. And yeah, it can kind of break and look a bit weird, but it for the most part works really well, I think. So that's it for all the tools and systems that I wanted to go over just for this video. I wanted to talk about some of the bugs that we had actually. One of them was right as we launched Frog Detective 2. I had reports that some of the cutscenes were very slow, or there was a black screen, like players were just stuck on a black screen in certain places for a long time. And the reason that happened is I might just trying to remember what triggers it. So we talked to Susan. Oh yeah, in the edit I can just skip. But she talks about I think she might talk about a sign. And yes, that animation there, how we, in the conversation, we cut away and it animates to look at the sign and then just pans back. But that animation was taking a really long time for only some people, which I thought was very strange at the time. And this is a few hours after launch, by the way. It was a pretty bad bug. It didn't make it unplayable, but oh wow, what is this? What is this? Okay. This is Mariner opening. Anyway, I was just opening the Susan script here to show. So we don't have many of those animations in the game, but they are controlled by the script. And we set up different cameras and we kind of animate them in the script and cut to them. But the reason that bug happened, so what was happening is, yeah, that animation of panning to the different camera took, let's say, I know this now, but it took 10 times as long. And the reason that happened is in the code, I take this script and I take these kind of custom functions and the values that are here, and I turn them into numbers. So in the code, I have to kind of convert some of these objects. Like I have to convert this 1.1 from text into a number. And the way we do that is we use something called float, like it's called parsing. But that's a very like standard thing that you do. But it turns out that based on your location, it'll interpret this decimal differently. So in Europe, everyone, this 1.1 was turning into just 11 because it sometimes in some localizations the like a comma and a decimal or a comma and a period are swapped in terms of how you read numbers. So only in Europe or some European countries, all these cutscenes were 10 times as long, and it took me like I'm really glad it only took me a few hours to figure this out, but I thought that was very wild, a very like bizarre bug that I did not expect at all. It does make sense, but it just really surprised me. I'm really glad I caught it within the first few hours of the game coming out, because it was pretty bad. Because at some point there was almost like a minute of completely black screen, and the player would just have to sit there, and there's nothing they could have done. Yeah, so I'm very happy I found that bug and fixed it. Something else that is kind of funny that I wanted to go over is something that's actually still in the game, and this is not that important, but it's something that I realized. Oh, I think Nutty's awake and trotting around. Anyway, so this is something that's currently in the game on Steam, and because I haven't updated it, but all the music. So in Warlock Woods, there's like a positional music system, and each character has their own track that fades in. I'm trying to find. Here we go. There's like a bass bed audio track, and then oh, that's Nutty. Hold on, I'll just open the door. Okay, Nutty. I'm trying to make this video. So yeah, in Warlock Woods, there's this bass village bed, which is played in the background, and then Gesundheit, Nutty. And then based on what character you're close to, different tracks fade in. But in the launched game, the import settings were set to decompress on load. And Nutty will go for a walk soon. You have to be patient. Anyway, yeah, in the launched game, all these audio tracks for the Warlock Woods were set to decompress on load, and these are all pieces of music, right? So these these are all pretty long. These are all 5 minutes. These are all 6 minutes because Dan is amazing, and he made this very long piece of music for our scene, which is great because I mean you do spend a lot of time here, but these can take up a lot of space, and if they're all set to decompress on load, actually that means that when you load the scene, they will all start decompressing and then be retained in memory to play. What this means is that the loading time for Warlock Woods is about 11 seconds, 12 seconds, when about 9 seconds of that is just the decompressing. And all these audio could have easily been set to streaming, and they just weren't. And it just meant that there's an extra 9 seconds on the loading screen, and it's not that interesting. It's not a bug. It doesn't break the game. But it is something that we just missed, and it's something kind of small that means that the loading screen, based on a setting, it could have just been changed, and there's no other reason why. I'll just load it now. I think the loading time in the editor is about equivalent to the built game. Yeah, so it's just like that's them sent to streaming, and it just loads in a few seconds rather than 12. It was just something that I completely missed when we were releasing the game, and it's actually not that important, but I thought it would be interesting just to explain that making a game is just, and releasing a game and doing everything right is not necessary, and there's a lot of different things that can go wrong, and it's not even that was wrong, it was just not ideal, I guess, not optimized, and things don't need to be optimized. They don't need to be perfect to release a game, and I think that's important to remember. So we just had some questions come in. I just thought I'd answer a few. We got one from A Year in Try on Twitter. Any insight into how you've organized all the code, assets, etc.? Well, so yeah, I struggled to figure out the best way to show the code or the code structure, or I guess specific to Unity. But I guess just kind of briefly show what kind of like the main structural assets there are. So yeah, I definitely use singletons a lot, and don't destroy and load, like scene persistent objects. So we have, I have this folder here called the core prefabs. In a Frog Detective scene, usually these 4 prefabs are the ones that you'd want to throw into the scene. So I have this object called GM loader, which it just loads the game manager if it doesn't exist already. So there's, of these 4 core prefabs, there's actually in a main menu scene, there's actually only needs to be the game manager. So if we play the scene, the game manager will load, and it will be contained in this don't destroy and load category, as well as what you can see is the episode manager. So each episode has its own manager, and depending on that's actually the scriptable define like what episode it is. Whoops, that's just my feed nutty alarm. So yeah, each episode has a manager, and that contains episode specific data. Like we have this kind of character library object that defines the characters for the dialogue system, and like also the colors, the display name color. And there's localization object here that will contain the episode specific localization data, and there's also achievement stuff here as well. So that's like really the only episode specific data, or episode specific object that needs to persist. So yeah, the game manager. Yes, there's a lot of singletons in here. There's like a loading manager that controls loading and switching between scenes. The save manager. There's a detective cursor, which is I just decided to keep the cursor like a persistent object. What else? There's like a Steam manager and the rewired input manager, and this is also this is like the UI event system, which also has a their own rewired event system or input module, I guess. So that's the game manager. If we go to a different scene, one that has interaction, like the office. So of these core prefabs, we've got the interaction manager, which is actually pretty simple. It actually only contains the curio manager, which is the curio is everything that can be selected, like this door handle or the magnifying glass or telephone. And curios also can start conversations. There's the dialogue. I should probably go over the dialogue managers. So this is an object that you only need to be along with the interaction manager. Like the dialogue manager only needs to be in scenes where it's relevant. We've got the yarn manager. There's all these yarn extension scripts that I made, which I showed off in the yarn example scene before. More singletons, really just handling different parts of the game. Conversation manager, camera manager. The conversation cameras here, and then there's all the UI for the dialogue, the canvas and everything. Can we see that in the editor? Yeah. And this is all in prefab, so I can change it if I want, and override it and make variants. I like the variant system. It used that a bit. The variants of the prefabs. The variant prefab system that Unity has. What else? Yeah, there's also the pause manager. So the pause menu. I try to make menus and UI easy to use and straightforward, and also consistent. So the pause manager. Yeah, I guess I don't have much more to say about that, but lots of singletons. I'm not sure what else to say really. Singletons, prefabs, game managers, loading managers. Otherwise, we've stuck to the Unity structure pretty closely. Like, there's nothing, we don't deviate from how you typically use Unity. So nothing that wild or different. Yeah. Welby_dev on Twitter asks, what was your greatest technical challenge to overcome in development? So I think I maybe mentioned it before, but we made Frog Detective 1 very quickly and used different tools for it, actually different dialogue tools and everything. We just used one from the asset store, the Unity asset store. And we made it very quickly, and I think we should have made it very quickly because we weren't sure if it was going to work, we weren't sure if it was going to be good or if people would like it. But once we released it and we knew that people did like it and that we had the opportunity to make another one, we kind of ramped up the structure of the game, or like ramped up the tools and like rethought a bunch of things. So I kind of remade the tools and like decided to use different tools. Like one of them, the biggest one was Merino. Oh, the biggest one was Yarn. Switching over to Yarn. And so when we did that, I decided to upgrade all of episode 1 to the new structure, the new system. And that was by far the most work. it wasn't, it wasn't impossible. There weren't many surprises or difficulties with that, really. It was just like very tedious. I had to be very careful because I really wanted to have it be like an invisible change for the most part. The UI did change, and we added things like the pause menu and just like accessible things so we could update later. But there wasn't there, but overall there hasn't been like a huge amount of technical challenge in working on this. It's the challenge comes in trying to do it well, I guess. Doing it at all is not too difficult, but doing it well can be difficult. And I think that's all I'm gonna do for this video, actually. If you'd like to contact me, you can email me at tom@thomasbowker.com. You can find the text for that on my Twitter. My Twitter is @thomasbowker. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.